Hello and welcome to the Candid Conversations. This is Marilyn. This is it's the 25th of January already, and we're kind of already out of January. We're nearly finishing January. The first month already is nearly gone. Literally got about 5-6 days. Wow, unbelievable. So, today's podcast is called Baby Boomers Generation X, Now What? And in case you've been living under a rock, you'll be aware of the term millennial thrown around. And according to statistics, millennials are now the biggest generational group. But before the millennial came the original biggest group, which were the baby boomers. So born between 1946 and 64, the baby boomers were the most wealthy and influential generation economically. And they still are at the moment. However, they are stated to be the most miserable generation, maybe because they've seen so much changes. You know, as you get older, you realize how things were in the good old days, because they were. They're just things. I mean, that's a matter of perspective, right? But in terms of, I'm looking at not just opportunities, because there's no better time than now, opportunities. But in terms of music, I'm sorry. In terms of fashion, I'm sorry. When we had fashion, when I was young, oh my God, I mean, people laugh at those things now, but our fashion, it felt good. I wouldn't say so much the 70s, kind of like 90s, 80s, 90s, certain parts of the 80s, 90s. I think the 60s had some okay things, not all of them were brilliant. But like the 40s and 50s, my God, the beauty of those dresses, my word. So, but we have that now, don't we? We've got all kinds of fashion that we can follow. Not everybody follows that though. Okay, so after the baby boomers, the most miserable generation, the generation that came after was Generation X, which is my generation, and they were referred to as a lost generation. And why is that? Is because of the shifting changes to social and societal values. And this is because there were more divorces, more single mothers, and apparently more loneliness. And I suppose, the age after 1964, 65, 66, from the 60s, you had freedom and people being more actualized. And you also had, the psychedelic experiments as well. So psychedelics was coming in as well, and free love. All these things were being more acceptable. And the people that put up and shut up from the baby boomers were kind of going to find themselves, maybe, yeah. But I want to stick about the lost generation. The baby boomers, for me, were my parents' generation, and they came here to work hard and return to the Caribbean. Some never made it back. My parents did, however, and that was the format that most Caribbeans followed. If you're from any other ethnic group, you did the same, but retired to the coast or back to the continent, or to the country of your origin. Some of them came back. So, but with Generation X, they followed, and which is my generation, some of them went back, but a lot of them are still working, because some of us won't retire till in their 60s. Some people are taking early retirement, so they've got a part-time job. They've been working since 16 or for whenever, and they've just taken their money because they can afford to. They've paid off their mortgage, and now they can afford not to work and just get a part-time job. And this is the same as the baby boomers as well, who are in their 60s, up until 65, and beyond. But many of the Generation X's are actually lost between a country that they grew up in and the countries of their parents. So, for example, Dominica, like there's some people that won't go back to Dominica, or they won't go back to Jamaica or Grenada or Trinidad or St. Lucia. They'll just go back periodically. And some just won't. So they're going to stay in England, or they may go to Spain or somewhere like that. But most of them will either go back home to the Caribbean or Africa, or they'll stay in England. Now, I think there's a slight difference with Africa, because the economies that are in Africa, because of the resources, which is a bit like Trinidad, they're quite vibrant, and they're quite a standalone country of its own. And I know there are problems, and people say they would never go back because certain parts are dangerous. But I just feel that there's more opportunities in those countries rather than some of the Caribbean countries. Like Dominica is brilliant for retiring, but it's still a lot of the young people are leaving the country because there's not much opportunities, because we don't have an international airport and we don't have tourism. So whereas with St. Lucia and other countries, they've got tourism to kind of keep their country going. So back to Gen X. So the problem many of them experience is that they don't feel home anywhere. So they become lost around age 55 to 65 because they desire to move, but they feel unable to take the leap. So what I'm going to cover in this podcast, it's going to be in 2 parts. I was going to do it in 3 parts, but I think 2 parts is sufficient. And that is the reason why baby boomers are miserable, the reason why many Generation X are lost, and the reason why millennials are carrying the unprocessed traumas of the past 2 generations, and how their insights can help both baby boomers and Generation X to move to the next stage of their life. Can help, not will help. Okay, so let's begin with baby boomers. So you're a baby boomer. You may have returned to the Caribbean because you immigrated back, or the coast. However, you feel stuck and frustrated because there's a dull ache inside you and you can't put your finger on what it is. So financially, you're doing okay. You've got the beautiful weather, you've got the sea, you're no longer in that horrible job. But there's a frustration and there's an ache. And why do you think this comes up? It's because you have time now. Your body has time to process all the traumas and a disruption that happened during your formative years. So you're a baby boomer, you've worked, some of you may have gone to college, but a huge number of you would have to have gone straight into the workplace. And you were the direct children, like on the Windrush, but you was more close to your parents who came over from the Windrush, and they would have been processing racism, but not only racism, they would have been processing any intergenerational trauma because their parents may still have been slaves. And so that trauma was passed on to you. So what you did, you put yourself into work and you was diligent, and you maybe worked 2 jobs, you bought your house, or you saved your money, you paid for your pension, and now you're living off the fruits of your labor. But this feeling is coming up. And this is where people start to drink and they start to do other things, who start feeling depressed, but are not aware that they're suffering from depression. And because therapy was frowned upon before the mid-60s for the general public, unless you was part of a yoga ashram or something like that, it's just something you didn't do. And therefore you could talk to your friends, but they was in the same problem as you. So the term misery love company is really quite key, because you were all sharing the same problems, but there was no solution because there was nobody in that same position, in a different position, that could guide you. And so now how can you find peace within as a baby boomer? Because you are back, or you're meant to be going back, or you're not sure if you're planning to go back because you don't feel that you will fit in because people are calling you English, or you're not part of the country, so you want to fit in. So there's a few things you can do to start the ball rolling of trying to feel better. And one of the main things that you can feel is trying to get in touch with the part of you that was never able to be relaxed. Because what's happening, even though you've left your 9 to 5, or you've left your 30-year job, your nervous system is still reacting like you're still in that job with that horrible boss. And also, so you can't relax into this retirement or into this space where you can get a new job or start a new course that you've always wanted to start. But what stops you again is, like what I said in my other podcast, black sheep, ugly duckling. You were never taught that you belonged anywhere, or you never felt like you belonged anywhere because you was ridiculed for your desires. But now you have the space to do that. And a really good way of starting is journaling. So there's so many journals, Alex Elle's got Note to Self, there's different journals that you can have. Lots and lots of people have free journaling prompts. I have some free resources on my page where you can just start writing every single day about how you feel. And without judgment, a really good book is The Power of Now from Eckhart Tolle. Eckhart Tolle. And I'm going to put it in the show notes as well as Note to Self. But they're really good books to kind of look at about being in the present. Or I love the really older one is Finding Your North Star. And yours truly, I have a book that I published, God, maybe 2006, and it's a workbook called The Creative Healing Playbook. And it's got some series of questions that may help you think about what you want to have, what you want to bring in your life. So I will include that as a PDF, again, in the link on my page. I mean, you can get it on Amazon, but I'm going to include it as a free download because I think it will be really helpful. So journaling is really, really important. Really nice technique to do, just writing down how you're feeling, not really judging, but doing that. And if some of you are quite religious, you could say a Bible verse first and then just write. Journaling could be to yourself, or it could be to God, it could be to Great Mother, or anybody that you believe in. Therapy is another thing. I always advocate for therapy. Spending an hour every week talking through your feelings will help you uncover parts of yourself that you didn't know existed. So a lot of the times, I had a client who was nearly 60 and she didn't realize that she was still on autopilot, and she was always creative, and she didn't realize this now was a time for her to be creative, just for creative sake. Rather than staying there cleaning the house and doing all these chores and going to see all these members of the community, which is nothing wrong, but she could take a few hours off her day and join an adult education class or a workshop and do something creative. And what she found was parts of herself that she didn't know existed. And this is where you start seeing people, do a cake making business, or they start quilting, or they start knitting, or they start doing baby shower, they start designing events. They just start all these new things. And some of them may just do walking. My sister goes walking, she still works, but she goes walking, and she's met an amazing group of people. And just the fact of doing something that you are passionate about, but don't wait till you're passionate to start it. I think that is the myth a lot of people have. It's actually better to start something when you're low and you don't know anybody. because you've got nothing to lose. Rather than, yes, you're upbeat. Because when you're upbeat, you're going to do the things that you're familiar with. So, and if there's no one, you're in a remote country and there's nobody, there's no walking group in your country, then start one in your country. And, you know, there's also really lovely online spaces. If you do have loneliness, there's some amazing online spaces where you can just share what you're going through on online spaces, and you know, and there's some courses and things like that. I would really say find online space rather than just being on social media, unless there's a group. And again, there has to be a designated group on social media, as opposed to these social groups where people they're just talking and talking and talking, and they're not offering solutions. So be wary of those groups where all people want to do is argue, because that is just gonna reinforce any negative feelings that you're feeling. And so lastly, I want to talk about coaching. Coaching is a space for you to start the journey of becoming more integrated and accepting of the new you. Also could be accepting of your partner or children, you know, and what coaching does, it's, you know, it's a focused time where, you know, I hold space for you, and also work with you to work with you to identify those places that are calling for you to see or calling for your attention. And they could be a trauma that needs to be released, or a feeling that needs to be released, or a judgment of yourself that needs to be released. A thought or feeling that about your life that needs to be released. Maybe you don't want to return back home, but you want to feel some sort of peace with your decision. Maybe you don't know how to be with yourself or your partner, and therefore that is stopping you from moving forward, because you don't know who your partner is. You've been together for so many years, but you don't know who you are and who they are. And that's the beauty of coaching. It will help you identify what you may need, being, which the ideal situation is being, enjoying your retirement. You're going to meet people for coffee, you've got a new set of friends, or you've got your old friends, or you're in the Caribbean or Africa or Spain, and you're really productive. You wake up and you've got so much energy, and you are helping other people. You know, you feel of service to people, or you dancing, you've joined a salsa club with your husband, and you're just feeling so good. And or you're helping people in, you know, build a church or a school, or you're doing classroom assistant in the evenings in your country, just helping people, and you're going home feeling fulfilled more than you ever did in a 9-to-5 job in the 30 years of working. And this is what coaching can give you. It will give you your life back, but it not only your life back, it will give you the person you've always wanted to be. And so rather than be part of the statistic of the baby boomers who are the most miserable, you know, the baby boomer generation is the foundation of our society, rightly or wrongly, good or bad. They've been the foundation, because after the war, everything changed. We became the industrial age, and so many different things started to happen. So this is the foundation. And for us to move forward, we have to let go of all the things, all the experiences that has taken our spirit away from us. And we need to call back our spirit, the spirit of wonder, the spirit of possibility, the spirit of joy back into our lives, so we can start enjoying what we call the golden years, as opposed to God's waiting room. Next week, we look at Gen X, and why many of them are not prepared for a joyful life in their 50s and 60s. And we also look at how the millennials can help both the Generation X and the baby boomers through their next stages of their life. I am signing off. I hope you enjoyed this podcast, and I'll see you next week. Bye for now.